Thank you for pointing that out. Was waiting for so long for people to show up. I forgot about the recording part of the evening. So we have it now, at least the second half we will capture. Yeah, anybody have any questions about this first half of chapter 18? No one? Okay. I know these can be difficult concepts we're looking at, and we seem to be going back and forth over these names for Jerusalem. But there is a controversy within the biblical community about what Babylon actually refers to. Many insist it's referring to the city of Rome. Some thinks that it's referring to the Catholic Church. Some believe that it is the ancient city of Babylon. But we are looking at the prophecy as it relates to the earlier prophecies of Isaiah and Ezekiel. And if we look at it, they have a correlation. And so we believe that this Babylon that's being spoken of here is the city of Jerusalem. And John is prophesying its destruction by drawing on the other prophets and what they have said and showing through his own visions that this is what God intends to do. Remember, we believe this vision that he's having came about before the destruction of the temple of Jerusalem. So it's not like he's reading into something that has already happened. He's prophesying what is about to take place. Okay? Just keep that in mind while we're going through all of that. Now, we're going to go through the next part of this chapter, which concerns the laments that are being pronounced over the city. So let's start. There will be mourning and weeping for her by the kings of the earth, who have prostituted themselves with her and held orgies with her. They see the smoke as she burns, while they keep it at a safe distance through fear of her anguish. They will say, mourn, mourn for this great city, Babylon, so powerful a city. In one short hour, your doom has come upon you. There will be weeping and distress over her among the traders of the earth, when no one is left to buy their cargoes of goods, their stocks of gold and silver, jewels and pearls, linen and purple, and silks and scarlet, all the sandalwood, every piece of ivory or fine wood, in bronze or iron or marble, the cinnamon and spices, the myrrh and the ointment, the incense, wine, oil, flour, and corn, their stocks of cattle, sheep, horses, and chariots, their slaves, and their human cargo. All the fruits you have set your hearts on have failed you, gone forever, never to return again. It's your life of magnificence and ease. The traders who have made a fortune out of her will be standing at a safe distance through fear of her anguish, mourning and weeping. They will be saying, mourn, mourn for this great city, for all the linen and purple and scarlet that you wore, for all your finery of gold and jewels and pearls. Your huge riches are all destroyed within a single hour. All the captains and seafaring men, sailors, and all those who make a living from the sea kept a safe distance, watching the smoke as she burned, and crying out, has there ever been a city as great as this? They threw dust on their heads and said, with tears and groans, mourn, mourn for this great city, whose lavish living has made a fortune for every owner of sea-going ship, ruined within a single hour. Now heaven, celebrate her downfall, and all you saints, apostles, and prophets. God has given judgment for you against her. Then a powerful angel picked up a boulder like a great millstone And as he hurled it into the sea, he said, "That is how the great city of Babylon is going to be hurled down, never to be seen again. Never again in you will be heard the song of the harpist and minstrel, the music of flute and trumpet. Never again will craftsmen of every skill be found in you, or the sound of the handmill be heard. Never again will shine the light of the lamp in you. Never again will be heard in you the voices of the bridegroom and bride. Your traders were the princes of the earth. All the nations were led astray by your sorcery. In her was found the blood of the prophets, saints, and all the blood that was ever shed on earth. These are the rest of the 5 laments sung over the burning city. In the 5th lament, the chapter will end with the saints' song of doom. The last lament is prefaced in verse 21 by a powerful angel's symbolic action of throwing a large stone into the sea, announcing Babylon's destruction. So here are the 5 laments of the great city. The messenger who illuminates the earth, kings of the earth who lamented, the merchants of the earth also lamented, the seamen of the earth lamented, and then, of course, the outcry of the church in heaven. In these passages, 3 classes of people sing a song of lament for the destruction of the city. They are the kings of the earth, who are the leaders of the nations of the Roman Empire, who conspired with the faithless covenant people in their apostasy for God. Next are the traders or merchants of the land, who will no longer share in the wealth that they were promised through Jerusalem. And then every shipmaster and everyone who sails and every sailor and man who makes his living by the sea. Judea had become one of the wealthiest trading centers in the Roman Empire, but now it's no longer profitable after the destruction of the city and the temple. So let's dissect some of these verses a little bit. Verses 9 to 19 contain the triple lament of the people of the earth. So we'll have a look at those. There will be mourning and weeping for her by the kings of the earth, who have prostituted themselves with her and held orgies with her. They see the smoke as she burns, while they keep at a safe distance through fear of her anguish. They will say, "Mourn, mourn for this great city, so powerful a city. In one short hour, your doom has come upon you." Josephus mentioned a very similar lament made by a man of Jerusalem named Jesus as well. He was the son of Ananus. He lived in Jerusalem before its destruction. And he died there from a Roman catapult stone in the year 70 AD during the siege of the city. But he said a prophecy every single day up until his death. And this is what he said. A portent, more still alarming, had appeared 4 years before. There was a time when the profound peace and prosperity still prevailed in the city. One Jesus, son of Ananias, an uncouth peasant, came to the feast at which every Jew was expected to put up a tabernacle for God. As he stood in the temple courts, he suddenly began to cry out, "A voice from the east, a voice from the west, a voice from the 4 winds, a voice against Jerusalem and the sanctuary, a voice against the bridegroom and the bride, a voice against the whole people." Day and night he uttered this cry as he went about all the alleys. Throughout this time, until the war broke out, he never approached another citizen, nor was he seen talking to any, but daily, like a prayer that he had memorized, he recited his lament, "Woe, woe to Jerusalem." So we'll go back now to, this was written by the historian Josephus. who chronicled the destruction of Jerusalem. So we'll go back to the voice from heaven. There will be weeping and distress over her among all the traders of the earth, when no one is left to buy their cargo of goods, their stocks of gold and silver, jewels and pearls, linen and purple and silks and scarlet, all the sandalwood, every piece in ivory or fine wood, in bronze or iron or marble, the cinnamon and spices, the myrrh and the ointment, the incense, wine, oil, flour, and corn, their stocks of cattle, sheep, horses, and chariots, their slaves and their human cargo. All the fruit you had set your hearts on have failed you. Gone forever, never to return, is your life of magnificence and ease. Jerusalem was one of the great crossroads of the ancient world. Historians write lavishly of the wealth that passed through it on its way to the ends of the Roman Empire. Ancient Jewish writings allow us to identify no fewer than 118 different articles of imported goods from foreign lands, some of which you see written here. In Alfred Edersheim's extensive work, The Life and Times of Jesus the Messiah, he says, "In these streets and lanes, everything might be purchased. The production of Palestine or imported from foreign lands, the rarest articles from the remotest parts, exquisitely shaped, curiously designed, and jeweled cups, rings, and other workmanship of precious metals, glass, silks, fine linen, woolen stuffs, purple and costly hangings, essences, ointments, and perfumes as precious as gold, articles of food and drink from foreign lands. In short, what India, Persia, Arabia, Media, Egypt, Italy, Greece, and even far-off lands of the Gentiles yielded might be had in these bazaars." This list in Revelation seems rather mundane at first until you come to the very last item. In Greek, it is literally translated as souls of humans. That final phrase, slaves or human cargo, may be related to the description of the Phoenician city of Tyre's traffic in slaves. But the Revelation passage suggests not just slaves, but the souls of men were being bought and sold, which is the condemnation of the great city of Jerusalem's spiritual bondage to sin. If the great prostitute city is Jerusalem, then instead of fulfilling God's plan to become the mother of all humanity, Jerusalem had prostituted her blessings, led her children into demonic bondage, and then finally to utter destruction. The voice from heaven continues. The traders who had made a fortune out of her will be standing at a safe distance through fear of her anguish, mourning and weeping. They will be saying, "Mourn, mourn for this great city, for all linen and purple and scarlet that you wore, for all your finery of gold and jewels and pearls. Your huge riches are all destroyed within a single hour." Oops, second. Now, both times we've heard that phrase, "within a single hour," and we don't take that literally. Obviously, it took more than an hour to destroy a city the size of Jerusalem. There is, however, in the passage a sense of a sudden, stunning disaster that has shocked the whole world. With the destruction of this rich Roman city in this province and her world-famous capital and magnificent temple would have been a shock to everyone, and a lesson, I would suppose, to all those kings, merchants, and seamen who, as they say, are standing far off, because to go to the aid of Jerusalem, they would incur the same wrath that she is suffering. Now, the description here of the city's great outfits or dress uses the colors of the liturgical worship in the temple. That's a reference to the temple priest's clothing and the high priest's vestments. Once again, this indicates the city's identity as Jerusalem, who is clothed in the same garments as the woman seated on the beast. There we go. All the captains and seafaring men and sailors and all those who make a living from the sea kept a safe distance, watching the smoke as she burned and crying out, "Has there ever been a city as great as this?" Who was like the great city. They threw dust on their heads and said with tears and groans, "Mourn, mourn for this great city, whose lavish living has made a fortune for every owner of sea-going ship, ruined within a single hour." Putting dust on one's head was a sign of grief. Every captain and seafaring man, sailors, and everyone employed through sea commerce would, of course, be affected by the loss of such a wealthy province. But it is likely that the ships and seamen point to the nations of the world connected to Judea, to the buying and selling of goods, and to whom the Jews were supposed to be God's witnesses. However, the sea in general, biblically, refers to the Gentile nations, to whom God called Israel to instruct and convert to belief in the one true God. When Israel was in fellowship with God and living up to the covenant agreement, she was rich in his spiritual and material blessings. The nations of the world came to her for both commerce and spiritual wisdom. However, instead of Israel converting these Gentile nations, she allowed them to corrupt her. Trade became a snare, exposing Israel to foreign goods, foreign ideas, foreign gods. Instead of spreading the worship of the one true God, ecumenism and the tolerance of pagan ideology led Israel to pollute the beliefs of her own people to such an extent that the admiring seafarers cried out, "Who is like the great city?" Because Israel had embraced the beast, she was judged, and in 1 hour all her riches and her world influence was destroyed. She was ruined, never again to be known as the great city or the bride of Yahweh. She lost her place at the center of covenant worship. From then till now, Rome became the home of new covenant believers. But Christians didn't go to Rome to destroy it. They went there to convert and to conquer it. That's the reason Jesus called Peter the son of Jonah in Matthew's Gospel. We know from other scripture passages that Peter was the son of a man named John, but Peter called the son of Jonah because he was like Jonah. God would send him to convert the capital city, Rome. Jonah converted Nineveh, the capital of the Assyrian Empire. And so Peter would be sent to this other world superpower to convert its capital city, and in turn, the entire Roman Empire. Proponents of the Rome as the great city, those who hold to that theory, point out that Jerusalem is not on the coast, but is an inland city. So this text from the scriptures, which says the sailors watched her burn from their ships, could not be true. That may be so, but then again, Rome doesn't qualify either. You cannot see the sea from the city of Rome, and ships on the sea cannot see that great city. Some think these seafarers could be the fishermen of the Sea of Galilee, but those fishermen also suffered and were destroyed in the destruction from the rebellion, and it says quite clearly they were watching from a safe distance. This phrase, watching the smoke as she burned, which is used figuratively here in these laments, does not necessarily mean that the seafarers literally watched Jerusalem burn. They're speaking as if the whole Roman world in 70 AD heard of this terrible destruction of the great city of Jerusalem, including the 7 Christian communities who received John's book of Revelation. So they all watched or stood by. No one came to her rescue. So we move on in this chapter. Now, heaven, celebrate her downfall, and all you saints, apostles, and prophets. God has given judgment for you against her. Then a powerful angel picked up a boulder like a great millstone, and as he hurled it into the sea, he said, "That is how the great city of Babylon is going to be hurled down, never to be seen again. Never again in you will be heard the song of the harpist and minstrels, the music of flute and trumpet. Never again will craftsmen of every skill be found in you, or the sound of the handmill be heard. Never again will shine the light of the lamp in you. Never again will be heard in you the voices of bridegroom and bride. Your traders were the princes of the earth. All the nations were led astray by your sorcery. In her was found the blood of prophets and saints, and all the blood that was ever shed on earth." Again, John identifies the voice speaking in this passage as a powerful angel. This is the third and final occurrence of that expression, a powerful angel, in this book of Revelation. And the use of that word, those words, powerful angel, the vision shows that an angel throws a millstone into the sea. It is the punishment for anyone who leads a child astray from God, which can refer to anyone who has potentially opened to becoming a child of God through faith and baptism. Now, this angel speaks first in the future, and then after throwing the millstone into the sea, it switches to the present tense. His action of throwing the millstone is a prophetic and dramatic, symbolic act, which brings to pass a future event. This passage also recalls the song of Moses in Exodus, when the song describes Pharaoh's chariots and men going down into the sea like a stone. It may help you to know that a millstone was 2 round, flat stones sandwiched together. It came in 2 types: a small millstone that you could use by yourself, by your own hand, but also as a very large millstone. And this was popular during the Greco-Roman period. These stones had to be pulled and pushed by a team of donkeys. The word in Greek refers to the larger millstone, which indicates the strength of the powerful angel of destruction. Now, this millstone also has another symbolic connotation. When God commanded David to build his temple, he did so on what had been a threshing floor for separating the valuable wheat grain from the worthless outer covering. The wheat kernels were saved, but the worthless chaff was destroyed by fire. A millstone would later ground the wheat grains into flour needed to make bread to feed the people. So the newly built temple of Yahweh became the threshing floor of the earth. And here the righteous wheat of humanity was separated from the worthless, sinful chaff. Revelation speaks of that great city, never to be seen again, can cause us some confusion. If this was Rome, then this could again not be true. Rome was never wholly destroyed, although it was ravaged many times by invading barbarian tribes. Jerusalem suffered destruction many times historically. She was utterly destroyed in 587 BC, again in AD 70, and once again in AD 135, after the Second Jewish Revolt, when the Romans had rebuilt the city and called it Aelia Capitolina. So, in a literal and physical sense, the prophecy about Jerusalem's everlasting destruction seems to be unfulfilled. But we're not looking at this in a physical way, but in a spiritual sense. It concerns the old Sinai covenant with Yahweh. It was broken, and it was never repaired. The destruction refers not to the physical city, but instead to Israel as the covenant people. That is the forever desolation of Jerusalem. The old covenant, having been fulfilled and being announced no longer valid, will not be found any longer. No longer will Israel be a distinct holy nation of special priests. They join the saved multitude of the earth with no distinction. The new Israel has become the new covenant church, the bride of Christ. There is no salvation outside of Christ and the new covenant kingdom of the universal church. Never again in you will be heard the song of the harpist and minstrels, the music of flute and trumpet. Never again will craftsmen of every skill be found in you, or the sound of the handmill be heard. Never again will shine the light of the lamp in you. Never again will be heard in you the voices of the bridegroom and bride. Your traders were the princes of the earth. All the nations will led astray by your sorcery. In her was found the blood of prophets and saints, and all the blood that was ever shed on earth. Some commentators do not list this song here as a lament, but instead as a shout of victory and even praise. In fact, it is both. There seems to be within it a great sadness and regret that the heavenly assembly is singing, but there is also a connection between the 5 laments and the symbolic presence of the number 5 in Scripture. The number 5 is symbolic of the grace and the power of God. Israel's destiny was to bring all nations of the earth into God's abundant grace. When she rejected Jesus as the Messiah, she lost her place as that conduit of God's grace and salvation. Instead, the new covenant Israel, spiritually fathered by the 12 Jewish apostles of Jesus Christ, would take her place. We can be further convinced of this connection because the lament of the church falls into 5 parts. It is significant that the laments for the fall of the great city begin and end with a call from heaven. Looking at the lament of the church, these are the 5 parts to which the song refers. And the song laments the loss of music, harpists, minstrels, flute players, trumpeters. It moans the loss of the productivity of the people, the craftsmen in all their trades, productivity of the land, the millers, those who harvested and milled the wheat to feed the people, the loss of God's word, which is the light of the lamp within you, and the loss of the covenant union, the voice of the bridegroom and the bride. These 5 classifications correspond to the functions of the temple in Jerusalem. 1, music, the musicians of the temple's Levitical orchestra and choir can be referred to here. Craftsmen, those who were in charge of building the temple and all of its beautiful stonework. Mill, as I said before, the temple was built on an ancient threshing floor, so it was considered the millstone of God. Lamp, within the temple is the lampstand, and that it symbolized the presence of God in the temple's holy place. And 5, marriage. The covenant was like a marriage between Yahweh and Israel. So the city was judged for two reasons. All the nations of the world were led astray and deceived by her sorcery. The practice of sorcery was associated with Satan, and the punishment under the law was exile or death. They would have spread the word of their God to other nations. Instead, they traded not only in slaves, but in human cargo. Again, that may refer to the souls of men. Their bad example influenced and separated people from the one true God. The second reason, she murdered the prophets and the saints and was accountable for all the bloodshed on earth. As the angel says, in her was found the blood of prophets and saints. This verse is a sum of Jesus' own condemnation of Jerusalem at the close of his final temple discourse, just before his own passion. Look, I am sending you prophets and wise men and scribes. Some you will slaughter and crucify. Some you will scourge in your synagogues and hunt from town to town. And so you will draw down upon yourselves the blood of every upright person that has been shed on earth, from the blood of Abel the holy to the blood of Zechariah, son of Barachiah, whom you murdered between the sanctuary and the altar. In truth, I tell you, it will all recoil on this generation. Jerusalem, Jerusalem, you that kill the prophets and stone those who are sent to you. Throughout biblical history, Jerusalem became the great harlot, the false prophet, the false bride. And she did this by continually falling into false teaching, apostasy, denying God, unfaithfulness to the covenant with him, and then persecuting the God's messengers that he sent to them to help them to repent. John has fulfilled his mission as the prosecutor of God's covenant lawsuit against Israel. She has been judged, and the saints and their blood poured out around God's altar have testified against her. And the verdict is guilty. So in the year 70 AD, the sentence was carried out. Destruction of Jerusalem by fire, and she was left desolate. She lost her title, Bride of Yahweh. In the new universal covenant, a remnant of the old that was set aside was grafted in. That remnant took her place as the bride with the hope that all of Israel would eventually turn from the fruitless old ways and come to the new eternal covenant in Christ. The bride of Christ continues in faith to show the light of Christ to all the nations of the world. But we must not become complacent, as Paul has warned all Christians. You will say, branches were broken off on purpose for me to be grafted in. True, they, through their unbelief, were broken off, and you are established through your faith. So it is not pride that you should have, but fear. If God did not spare the natural branches, he might not spare you either. Remember God's severity as well as his goodness, his severity to those who fell, and his goodness to you, as long as you persevere in it. If not, you too will be cut off. And they, if they do not persevere in their unbelief, will be grafted in. For it is within the power of God to graft them back again. So that is our class for tonight. And on the chat box, I see there's a few messages there. Let's start at the top. Let me enlarge this a little bit so I can see what I'm reading. All right. Sean asks, I understand that the nation was Jerusalem. However, they received their destruction as due to them. Temple reduced to rubble. However, it must be a new nation that is as evil today. Or it could be the new temple that they were planning as we speak. If they have prepared an altar to sacrifice red heifer cows soon for building the temple again. I'm not sure what you're getting at here, Sean. Every sea captain and all who travel by ship, the sailors and all who are living in the sea will stand far off. Captains' ships are paid in US dollars globally nowadays, so this would make sense as today. Again, be careful of taking this prophecy and what it's saying and bringing it into our times. John knows nothing of our times. He is prophesying about the destruction of Jerusalem. So we have to remember these things are for that time period. We will get on to the future things in some coming chapters, the last chapters of Revelation. But as far up to this point, all we're talking about is the destruction of the old covenant, which has now been replaced by the new covenant. Okay. And yes, again, when we say specified all, not some, we're talking again of that time period. It is tempting to look at this and seeing correlation within our own world of all the things that are taking place here. And that is because human nature is basically the same throughout entire history. That does not mean, though, that John is prophesying in this particular instance things that pertain to us. We'll get into that a little bit later. But this is a reminder and a reflection of our own times. And as I ended today with Paul's warning, as God did to them back then, he can do to us now. And if he so chooses, he could put them back on the vine and they could make a new covenant with them if he wishes. So again, be careful of how you interpret what's going on in Scripture. It was not meant to be used as an hourglass or a magnifying glass of our times. Okay. And you also asked, watching the city smoke burning from the sea. Seafarers watching the city burn. Again, USA surrounded by Atlantic Ocean, and the Pacific Ocean was so highly again, we're not talking about our time. Yes, you can see the reflection of it, and you can take it as a warning that things could happen to us as they happen to them. But this is not a prophecy about the states. Although you can see, and I do continue as I go through it, many, many things that seem to speak to the same problems again and again. Okay. Does anybody else have any other questions? What do you mean about the cows? What cows are we talking about? Sure. Just a second. Let me find you on my list of participants. And I'll unmute you. Where are you? Where are you? Ah, there you are. Okay, I'll turn off the microphone. Come on, Sean.
Hello, Monsignor, can you hear me?
Yes, I can.
Good evening. Yeah, so I actually, this is on the news as we speak, since 2022, actually, about the red heifer cows. So what's happened is some of the Jews in Jerusalem, including the priestly class and everything, they're planning to sacrifice red heifer cows which are ritualistic as per the book of Numbers or something, they said. And it was on the news as of till quite recently, where they actually moved a step ahead. So they got the cows genetically modified and they brought them in from the US, and they actually kept in Jerusalem now, and they're planning to sacrifice them. So they recently, a few days ago, they actually said on the news that they had built the altar where they're going to sacrifice the cows. And the reason being they want to sacrifice them so that they can, believe, burn sacrifice, and they use the ashes to basically as a purification before they build the third temple. That's the main goal of this whole exercise, and it's a long-term goal. They've been planning it since 2022 when they got the cows, and yeah, that's currently in the news as we speak. So they are planning to build a new temple,
But that
which is
doesn't
pretty
mean they
interesting.
can rebuild the covenant with God.
Exactly,
They're
exactly.
just
But
building a
something
building.
weird is going on. And they say this whole thing about the Palestinian war is basically to gain access to the Dome of the Rock where they want to build the temple. So it's not about the country Palestine. They're focusing on the war to get back the rights to the Dome
Yeah,
of the Rock.
yeah.
Because although it's in Israel, it's controlled by the Palestinians. They say it is all on the news. I mean, I'm not making this up.
No, no, I
It's
know
all
that,
there out
and
there.
it's
Yeah.
it's a long-going standing belief of the Jews that
Hmm.
the
Hmm.
Messiah cannot come until that temple is rebuilt.
Hmm. And then again, like, okay, I'm referring to the US a lot because that's what's in the news again. So that's the reason why they think the US is kind of supporting this whole exercise, because behind the scenes, that's what's going on.
I don't know if the U.S. is supporting it,
Yeah, they are in
but
behind the scenes.
they're going along with it. But it's not
Hmm.
all
Hmm.
that's going to do is cause more controversy.
True, true.
So, I mean, I don't think the U.S. is one that gets into. They'd have to destroy the
Mm-hmm.
Dome of the Rock, and that's going
Mm-hmm.
to be impossible. That's
Mm-hmm.
going to be almost impossible. That would cause a world war.
That's exactly what everyone's saying right now, and that's where all of the Muslim nations are rallying around Palestine right now, and they're saying if they do anything, they attack any of them, like already, like we saw with Iran, all of the others are ready to, like, go all out against Israel. And they said, and there's one part where it says, the city will be, like, destroyed for a certain number of days. I mean, that's highly likely if this happens.
Of course,
They'll
it's
they'll be all
like,
like targeting Israel again, all
but
around from all
that's
sides.
been going on for years. That I don't know
Mm.
why you're trying to. Are you trying to relate it to this in any way? It's
Could
not
be
really.
because this is happening as we speak. Like, there was never this thing of the temple being built until 2022. Like, I mean, maybe they had it in the plans, but it's actually happening now, like as we speak. So something interesting. Just said I'll share that.
Oh no, it's interesting,
Yeah,
but I
yeah.
really don't see it as being a part of God's plan. God has severed
Mm,
the spiritual covenant. We're talking about a building now.
mm,
The
mm,
temple, when it was destroyed, was the house of God. He was there
mm-hmm,
present, but
mm-hmm,
he withdrew from it
mm-hmm,
and allowed it to be destroyed. He's
mm,
not going to fill another temple that's being built in this manner.
mm. But they said there will be this person who will come and be
You
standing like a
cannot force
sacrilegious person.
God to come to you by building him a temple.
Mm, mm. But there's a part where they say there's this this abomination of desolation that will stand in the temple. So probably that's what's going to come to this temple, possibly.
That was about the Roman standards that were about to be erected in the
Oh,
temple. Nero was
okay.
about to put his statue into
Mm,
Jerusalem's temple.
mm, mm,
That's
mm,
what that is referring to historically.
mm. I wonder what they're planning to install in the temple in that case.
Who knows? You see,
Yeah,
this is sometimes the hubris of human beings. They think
yeah,
if we create what was in the past again,
yeah.
God has no choice but to come back to us. You
True.
cannot force God to come back to you in that manner.
Yes, I
So
understand.
they can build all the temples they want. It
Yeah,
won't change anything. In fact, it'll just destroy everything around them.
true, true.
They'll
It's
be
angering
architects of
everyone
their own
else.
destruction then.
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm.
So
Yeah, true, true.
yeah, that's true. It's
Yeah,
difficult concept that the Jews, because they reject the Messiah,
yeah.
they're still waiting for him.
Uh-huh, uh-huh.
And so they think the temple has to be there for him to come, which it was when he
Yeah.
did come.
True.
So you see, it's a blind spot here that they can't get
Yeah,
past.
yeah.
It's unfortunate because
Yes.
this is just more politically motivated than spiritually
Mm,
motivated.
mm, mm.
because Israel now doesn't really call itself the chosen people anymore, but they see themselves as a world power.
True.
And so if this was spiritual in nature,
Yeah,
I don't think they'd be going about the way they're going about it.
exactly. Yeah.
And it wouldn't matter where the temple is.
Mm, mm,
Just because it was on that Temple Mount twice doesn't mean it has to be there again.
mm, mm, mhm. Very true.
Anybody
Very
else
true.
has anything else they'd like to add or comment?
Thanks, Monsignor. That's all
You're
for today.
welcome. You're
Thank you.
welcome.
Yeah.
Thank you. Okay, so I guess we're finished for this evening, and I will see you all again next week. I will download this to YouTube and send everybody a copy of the. Unfortunately, I'm sorry we missed the first part, but as I said, really what we really want to concentrate on is the second part, because it's going to lead us into some very important stuff coming up. Okay. Thank you all for being here, and I'll see you all again next week.